They say life rewards kindness in the most unexpected ways, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that giving a bowl of soup to an old, lost man on the street would change the entire course of my life. I thought I was helping a stranger down on his luck. But I was uncovering a mystery, and awakening a past that had been buried in silence. It was a freezing Thursday afternoon when I saw him for the first time. I was coming out of the flower shop, arms full of white daisies for my late mother's memorial. The city around me buzzed with its usual chaos, people hurrying with their heads down, taxis honking, vendors shouting about hot buns and lottery tickets. And then, in the middle of it all, was him. He was crouched against the wall of a closed pharmacy, his coat in tatters, hair grey and unkempt, and a beard that looked like it hadn't met a razor in years. His eyes, however, his eyes were what froze me in place. They were not dull or desperate like most of the homeless I'd seen before. They were confused, scared, like a child lost in a nightmare. I don't know what compelled me to walk toward him. Maybe it was the way he held a cracked photo frame to his chest. Or maybe it was the way people crossed the street to avoid him, like he was invisible. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Are you hungry?" He looked up at me slowly, as if the sound of my voice was the first thing he'd heard in days. "I think I used to be," he whispered. I didn't understand what he meant at first. I offered him a sandwich I'd picked up for myself. He took it with trembling hands, staring at it like it was a relic. The man was starving, but he ate slowly, carefully, like he didn't know how. That's when I noticed the gold watch on his wrist. It was covered in grime, but it still shone beneath the dirt. And it wasn't just any watch, it was a limited edition Patek Philippe. My father used to sell luxury watches before he passed, and I knew one when I saw one. That model alone cost more than I'd make in 3 years. I didn't say anything. Not yet. "Do you remember your name?" I asked gently. He blinked a few times, then shook his head. I think it was Charles. Or maybe Richard. I remember music, a piano, a woman laughing. But the rest, it's all fog. My heart ached. What if he had a family looking for him? What if he was someone important? I glanced at the picture frame he was clutching. The photo was cracked, but I could still see the image, a man in a tuxedo, standing next to a grand piano, with a beautiful woman in a red dress kissing his cheek. That man looked exactly like him, but younger, stronger. Something inside me clicked. "I can help you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Come with me. We'll figure this out." He hesitated. Then, for the first time, he smiled. It was small, worn, and unsure, but it reached those frightened eyes. That was the beginning of a story I never meant to be part of. A story of secrets, lost fortune, betrayal, and redemption. And above all, a story about how one small act of kindness can unravel everything you think you know about the world. I didn't think it through. Not really. I didn't consider the stairs we'd get on the subway, or how odd it might look, a young woman guiding a disheveled old man like he was her grandfather. But I couldn't just leave him there. Something about the sadness in his eyes wouldn't let me walk away. We reached my tiny apartment an hour later. I lived in a third-floor walk-up with flickering hallway lights and paint that peeled at the corners. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And in that moment, it was the only shelter I could offer. He stood awkwardly at the door, as though waiting for permission to enter a temple. I gently nudged him forward. "It's not the Ritz, but it's warm," I said, trying to make light of it. He smiled faintly. "Smells like rosemary and rain." I blinked. "That's weirdly poetic." He gave a sheepish shrug, then lowered himself onto my faded grey sofa like he was afraid it might break beneath him. I offered him a blanket, which he accepted gratefully, wrapping himself up like a child. I moved to the kitchen and heated up a bowl of lentil soup, trying not to overthink the situation. I was a waitress, barely scraping by. I had no business taking in a stranger. And yet, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I'm Lily. By the way. I called from the stove. A pause. Then, hesitantly, you can call me Henry. Henry. I repeated, filing the name in my mind. Nice to meet you. We ate in silence. Every now and then, I'd glance at him, watching the way he held the spoon like it was unfamiliar. Like he hadn't used one in years. He flinched at sudden noises, looked behind his shoulder often, and kept that cracked photo frame close to him like a shield. Do you want to take a shower? I asked after dinner, unsure how to phrase it without sounding rude. He looked at me, surprised. Do I smell that bad? I laughed. Not terrible. But you'd feel better. I have a clean towel and some clothes that might fit. My neighbor left a bunch of old stuff when he moved. A few minutes later, the water ran in the bathroom, and I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo he'd left on the coffee table. The man in the picture looked powerful, tall, confident, charming. The woman beside him was radiant. Mid-laugh, hand resting on his chest. Was it his wife? His daughter? A lover? My fingers itched to search online, to run a reverse image search. But something told me to wait. Let him trust me first. He emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later looking like an entirely different person. His hair was damp and combed back. His beard trimmed down with the cheap razor I'd given him. Dressed in a plain sweater and jeans. He no longer looked like a man forgotten by the world, but someone who had simply wandered off the path. Feel better? I asked. He nodded, touching the collar of the sweater like it was silk. Like I borrowed someone else's life. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, almost in a whisper, you remind me of someone. I tilted my head. Who? I don't know. He admitted, frustrated. I see your face and I feel calm, safe, like I'm not lost. His words sent a strange shiver through me. Henry, do you think someone's looking for you? He paused. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe they've already given up. I wanted to argue, to tell him that someone out there must miss him. But deep down, I wondered, what if he really had been forgotten? I made up the couch for him that night. He insisted on sleeping on the floor, saying he didn't want to impose. But I wouldn't hear of it. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I found myself thinking about how weirdly normal it all felt. As though he wasn't a stranger, but someone who had always been there. Part of my story. I didn't know then that he was. That the man lying just a few feet from me was not just lost, but stolen, from himself, from the world, from a life of wealth, power, and betrayal. And that helping him would drag me into a world I had no idea I was connected to. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee, real coffee. Not the cheap instant kind I usually had to settle for. I stumbled out of my room, hair a mess, expecting to find an empty kitchen. But there he was, Henry, wearing an apron, my apron, and pouring steaming coffee into two mismatched mugs like he'd done it 1,000 times before. He even hummed a melody under his breath. Something slow and haunting. It stirred something strange in me. Like a déjà vu I couldn't place. You cook now? I joked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. He glanced up with a sheepish smile. I found the beans in the back of your cabinet. I hope you don't mind. I shook my head. I'm just impressed. I've lived here 2 years and never figured out how to work that machine. He handed me a mug and sat down at the table. His eyes distant again. I dreamt about a piano last night, he said after a beat of silence. I froze. A piano? He nodded. A black grand piano. My hands were on the keys. There were people watching, clapping. Maybe. I was wearing a suit. The kind with tails. I sat slowly, mug in hand. Do you think you were a musician? No, he said. Too quickly. Not a professional. I don't know how I know that. But, playing was for pleasure, not performance. I watched him carefully. Maybe your memory is starting to return. Maybe, he said softly. But it's like looking at a fogged mirror. I can see shapes, but not their face. I hesitated. then stood and brought the photo frame from the living room. This picture. Is this you? He took it in his hands again, studying it like he hadn't seen it in years. Yes. I think so. I look younger. Happier. That woman, she's important. I know her. But her name. I can't grasp it. Do you want me to try and find her? He flinched. No. Not yet. I don't want to bring someone into this if I'm dangerous. What if I'm not who I think I am? I frowned. What do you mean? What if I did something terrible? He whispered. What if people aren't looking for me because they're better off without me? I stared at him. You helped me make coffee. Henry. You're not a danger. You're lost. That's all. He looked down, fingers tightening around the photo. You're kind to say that. That afternoon, I went to work at the diner, leaving Henry with strict instructions to stay inside and rest. I hated the idea of leaving him alone. But bills didn't pay themselves. I kept thinking about him between taking orders and wiping down tables. My friend Chloe noticed my distraction. You okay? She asked while refilling the ketchup bottles. I brought someone home last night, I admitted. She blinked. Wait. Like a guy? An old man? Homeless? I think he has amnesia. Chloe stared at me like I had 3 heads. Lily. What if he's dangerous? I don't think he is. You don't think or you don't know? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know. But something in my gut told me he wasn't a threat. He was something else entirely. A mystery I was meant to solve. When I got home that night, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Henry? I called. No response. Panic bloomed in my chest. I checked the couch, empty. The kitchen, empty. Then I saw the balcony door slightly ajar. I stepped out and found him standing at the edge, staring up at the night sky. The wind tousled his silver hair, and he looked smaller somehow, like a boy who'd wandered too far from home. You scared me, I said, trying to sound calm. I'm sorry, he murmured. The stars looked familiar, like I've counted them before. I joined him at the railing. That's a nice thought. He turned to me. Lily, do you believe in fate? I blinked. What fate? That people are meant to meet, no matter how unlikely the circumstances. I hesitated. I didn't. Until I met you. He smiled sadly. Then maybe there's still hope for me. I didn't know it then. But that night was the turning point. The moment the shadows around Henry's past began to stir. The beginning of memories resurfacing, and dangers I couldn't yet see. Because someone, somewhere, knew exactly who he was. And they weren't happy he was alive. The next day, it rained. Not the soft kind that kissed windows and made you want to sleep in, but the relentless, sideways kind that soaked through jackets and made the streets smell like metal and regret. I was supposed to have the morning off, so I made us pancakes, slightly burned but edible. Henry devoured his like a man who hadn't tasted sweetness in years. There was something almost childlike in the way he tilted his head, eyes wide with quiet joy. And then, between bites, he said, I think my last name starts with an M. I dropped my fork. An M? He nodded slowly, brows furrowed. Something like Mendelssohn. Mendel? No. Marcus. Or Marlowe. I repeated the names aloud, watching his face with each one. At Marlowe. His hand twitched. Wait, I said. That one. Marlowe. Does that sound right? He closed his eyes. Yes. Marlowe. Henry Marlowe. A beat passed. My heart thudded. I got up, grabbed my laptop, and opened the browser. Wait, he said quickly. What are you doing? Looking it up. Just trust me. He didn't stop me. It didn't take long. Henry Marlowe. CEO. Philanthropist. Piano enthusiast. Estimated net worth, $3.8 billion. There he was, in photo after photo. Clean-shaven and powerful. Hosting charity galas. Standing beside political leaders. Featured on magazine covers. And then, A news article. Billionaire Henry Marlowe presumed dead after yacht explosion. Date, 11 months ago. I couldn't breathe. I turned the screen toward him. He stared, unblinking, at the images. His hand hovered above the trackpad. Trembling. I know this man, he whispered. That's me. Tears sprang to my eyes. You were declared dead. I'm not. No, I said, voice shaking. You're very much alive. He sat back, stunned, the truth slamming into him like a wave. Then why can't I remember my wife? My family? My name only came back when I saw your mirror this morning. And the piano. It keeps showing up in my dreams. I pointed to one of the images. Is that her? I asked, motioning to the woman beside him, tall, elegant, dark-haired, wearing a diamond necklace that could pay off every loan I'd ever taken. Henry squinted. Yes. That's Vivian. Your wife? I think so. Or was. He touched the screen, then flinched. But I don't feel anything. No warmth. No pain. Nothing. We sat there in silence. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my chest. Henry, do you think the yacht explosion was really an accident? His eyes met mine, sharp, alert. The fog suddenly thinner. I don't know. But if someone went through the trouble of declaring me dead, they might want me to stay that way. A chill crawled down my spine. I closed the laptop slowly. We have to be careful. If someone learns you're alive, we don't know what they'll do. He nodded. And then, almost in a whisper, I need to go back. My eyes widened. Back where? To the estate. To my home. If it still exists. Maybe it'll trigger more memories. Maybe I'll understand why I'm still alive when the world thinks I'm not. You can't go alone. I wasn't planning to, he said. And then, a soft smile. I was hoping you'd come with me. I swallowed. You're asking a broke waitress to help a billionaire with amnesia sneak into his old mansion? I'm asking a kind, brave woman to help me find out who I am. How could I say no? That night, I packed a bag, filled the tank of my aging Corolla, and made a decision that would change everything. We were going back to the beginning. But what we found there would be nothing like we expected. We drove through the night. Henry sat in the passenger seat, staring out the rain-smeared window, his fingers tapping softly on his knee to the rhythm of some forgotten melody. I stole glances at him every few minutes, still not used to the bizarre truth. I had a billionaire in my car. A billionaire presumed dead. A billionaire who couldn't remember the woman he once called his wife. The GPS led us out of the city and into the hills, where winding roads twisted through thick forests and fog. The kind of place you'd expect to find secrets buried in the ground. Henry didn't say much, but I saw how his posture changed the closer we got, how his hands clenched tighter, how his jaw locked. Then, around dawn, the trees parted, and we saw it. Marlowe Estate. Massive wrought iron gates loomed ahead, the initials carved in the center. Beyond them stretched a private road lined with ancient oaks. And at the very end, barely visible in the soft morning mist, stood a mansion so large it looked like a museum. Stone walls, ivy-covered balconies, windows that seemed to watch us from the distance. Henry stared, unblinking. This is it, he whispered. Do you recognize it? Yes. But not from the outside. It's the piano room. That's what I keep seeing in my head. I parked a few yards away and killed the engine. So what now? We break in? He gave me a crooked smile. I built this place. I don't think it counts as breaking in. Still, the gates were locked, and there were cameras in every corner. If someone was still watching the property, we'd be caught in seconds. But fate, as it had since the beginning, intervened. A groundskeeper's truck rolled up the side lane, a bearded man in his 60s, with tired eyes and a name tag that read Louis. As he stepped out to unlock the side gate, Henry straightened. I know him, he said quietly. I think I trusted him once. I followed his lead as he approached. Excuse me, Henry called. Louis turned, and froze. His eyes went wide. His mouth dropped open. Mr. Marlowe? he whispered. Is it? Is it really you? Henry hesitated. Yes. I think so. Louis took a step closer. Then reached out and grabbed Henry's shoulders like a father finding a lost child. God in heaven. We thought you were dead. Henry managed a broken smile. So did I. Within minutes. We were through the gates. Driving up the long road to the mansion. Louis explained that the estate had been locked down since Henry's death. But that some staff still came by for maintenance. The media frenzy had faded. But Vivian, Henry's wife, had insisted on keeping the place untouched. She didn't move out? I asked. Louis shook his head. No. She lives in the guest house out back. But she hasn't stepped foot inside the main house since the funeral. The word funeral hit like a hammer. You had a funeral? I asked Henry quietly. He nodded. Apparently. I missed it. The car came to a stop in front of the main entrance. I expected grandeur, and got it. Marble steps. Bronze doors. A chandelier visible through the front windows the size of a car. But something about it felt sad. Hollow. Like a stage that hadn't been used in years. Henry turned to Louis. The piano room. Can you take me there? The old man hesitated. Then nodded. Of course. Sir. Inside. The air was thick with dust and memory. The house felt asleep. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of Henry. His family. Landscapes he once owned. We walked past grand staircases and endless hallways until we reached it. The piano room. It was exactly like in the photo. A black Steinway sat in the center. Covered in a silk cloth. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the garden. Shelves of music books lined the walls. And in the corner, a cracked leather armchair sat beside a crystal decanter, half full. Henry stepped inside like he was crossing into another life. His hand hovered over the keys. And then he pressed one. The sound echoed, clear, melancholic, perfect. He closed his eyes. Played a second note. Then another. And then, like a dam breaking, he began to play a full melody, soft, haunting, beautiful. Tears streamed down his face. But he didn't stop. I stood by the door, frozen. Because in that moment, I realized something important. His body remembered before his mind did. And someone powerful had tried to take this music from him. To silence it forever. But Henry Marlowe was waking up, and whoever had buried his past would soon regret they hadn't buried him deeper. The music faded slowly, like a ghost retreating into the corners of the room. When the final note lingered and died, Henry sat in silence, his hands still hovering over the keys. His shoulders shook slightly, not from fear or confusion anymore, but from something deeper. Like grief rising from a place he didn't yet understand. I crossed the room quietly and knelt beside him. Are you okay? He looked at me. Eyes rimmed with tears. But clearer than I'd ever seen them. I played that at our wedding, he said softly. It was her favorite. Vivian? He nodded. For a moment. He looked like a man torn in two, half grounded in the present, half still wandering through a broken memory. Then a new voice entered the room. It's been a long time since I've heard that song. We both turned. Standing in the doorway was Vivian. She looked nothing like the photos. In them, she was radiant, poised, untouchable. But the woman before us now, she was thinner, her skin paler, eyes darker, not just from makeup, but from something hollow behind them. She wore a silk robe, and her bare feet were silent against the marble floors. And when her gaze fell on Henry, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even run to him. She just stared, like she was seeing a ghost she wasn't sure she wanted back. Vivian, Henry said slowly, standing. It's me. I can see that, she replied, voice flat. Though I have to say, you're not nearly as dead as they told me you were. I stepped forward. He has amnesia. He only just remembered his name yesterday. We didn't know who to contact. She held up a hand, silencing me without even glancing in my direction. Do you know what it was like, she said to Henry, to bury you? To stand there, in front of your friends and investors, pretending to understand how a man could explode on a yacht and not leave behind so much as a cufflink. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "No." She cut him off. "You don't get to be sorry. You don't even remember what you should be sorry for." Henry took a step forward. "Vivian. What happened? That night on the yacht, why was I there alone? Why do I feel like someone wanted me gone?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned her eyes to me, cold, calculating. "And you? What are you? A gold digger with good timing? Or just a pretty waitress hoping to catch the eye of a lost billionaire?" I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I helped him when he had nothing. I didn't know who he was. And yet here you are, in his house, touching his memories. Henry raised his voice. "Enough. Vivian. She's the only one who cared. While you, what did you do? Where were you when I was out there alone?" Vivian's lips curled into a small, bitter smile. "You really don't remember, do you?" There was silence. Then she stepped into the room, walked straight to the decanter, and poured herself a drink. Her hand didn't shake. "You were going to leave me, Henry," she said quietly. "That night. You told me you were done with the lies. The company. The fake charity fronts. The shell corporations. You said you'd found someone else. That you were going to start over. You threatened everything we built." He looked stunned. "I don't remember any of that." "No. Because someone made sure you wouldn't." My breath caught. "What do you mean?" Vivian turned to me, her eyes suddenly sharper than knives. "Do you think I'm the villain in his story?" she said. "I'm not. But the people who run his empire? The ones he tried to expose? They are. And if they find out he's alive..." She trailed off, then placed her drink down with a soft clink. I kept quiet to protect myself. To protect what little of him I thought was left. But now that he's standing here, whole, alive, things are going to change. Henry stepped closer. "Tell me everything. Who did this?" Vivian looked at him. And for a second, just a second, I saw something raw pass between them. Something buried deep beneath the bitterness and betrayal. Love? Regret? Guilt? I couldn't tell. Then she whispered, "You should never have come back." And just like that, we were no longer chasing memories. We were running from whoever wanted them buried. Because Henry wasn't just a man with amnesia anymore. He was a threat, a witness, and maybe a target. We didn't sleep that night. Vivian left the piano room without another word, her robe trailing behind her like a closing curtain on a stage. Henry stood there for a long time, staring at the decanter she'd abandoned, fingers twitching at his side like he was fighting an instinct to follow, or to flee. "She's hiding something," I said once we were alone. He nodded slowly. "Or protecting something. Either way, she just confirmed what you suspected, someone wanted you gone." Henry sat on the armrest of the piano bench. Vivian mentioned the board. "The company." "Marlowe Industries," I said. "It's everywhere online. Energy contracts. Pharmaceuticals. Global tech patents." I remember bits of it. Offices. Meetings. But no faces. No names. I pulled out my phone and opened the company's website. "They replaced you with someone named Vincent Shaw. I read. Interim CEO appointed 4 weeks after your death." Henry's face darkened. "Vincent? Yes. He was my second in command. I never trusted him. Slick talker. Always 2 steps ahead in every conversation." I scrolled further. "He was also listed as the last person to see you before your yacht trip." That made Henry freeze. "That can't be a coincidence." I showed him the screen. Vincent was younger. Maybe late 40s. Dressed in expensive suits. Every feature chiseled to fit the mold of corporate charm. But his eyes had the same cold detachment I saw in Vivian. "He knew," Henry said. "He had to know what would happen that night." "But what did happen?" I asked. "You were on your yacht alone. No crew. No tracking records. And then, boom. Explosion. You disappear. No body. Everyone moves on." "I must have survived and washed ashore somewhere," he murmured. "But who found me?" Why didn't they help me remember? Or maybe, I whispered, someone helped you forget. We both stared at each other. The implications were terrifying, but we had no proof. Just scattered memories. A broken photo frame. And a haunting melody tied to a past Henry barely grasped. Then he stood up. I want to go to the office. I blinked. Now? Tomorrow. During business hours. I want to see who flinches when they see my face. Henry, if they try to kill you once, then we'll know who they are by how they react. The next morning, Louis, the loyal groundskeeper, drove us downtown in an old black town car. The same one Henry had apparently used for years. We took back streets, avoiding attention. Henry, now clean-shaven and dressed in one of his old tailored suits retrieved from the master closet. He looked powerful, regal, like the man from the photo finally stepping back into himself. But his eyes were different. He was still haunted, still unsure, and yet, he was ready. We arrived at Marlowe Industries headquarters. A glass monolith that towered above the city. The kind of building where billion-dollar decisions were made while the rest of the world went about their lives below. As we entered the lobby, heads turned. Phones dropped. The receptionist, a woman in her 30s with clipped professionalism, gasped so loud she nearly choked on her coffee. Mr. Marlowe? She stammered. Henry gave a small nod. Good morning. She immediately picked up the phone, her fingers shaking. We didn't stop to wait. We took the elevator straight to the executive floor. It was silent when the doors opened. Modern, sleek, filled with glass walls and expensive artwork. People froze at their desks. No one moved. No one spoke. And then, from the corner office, Vincent Shaw emerged. He paused when he saw us. His eyes flicked to Henry, then to me, then back again. Then, unbelievably, he smiled. Henry, he said smoothly, back from the dead. I see. Henry's jaw clenched. We need to talk. Of course, Vincent said. Like this was a routine Tuesday. Come in. We followed him into the office, spacious, minimalist, the city skyline spilling out behind him through the windows. He gestured for us to sit. Henry remained standing. So, Vincent said, pouring himself a glass of something amber. What brings you here? Old friend? You tell me. Henry replied. You were the last person to see me before I disappeared. The yacht exploded. I was presumed dead. And you just stepped in. Vincent took a sip, unfazed. Someone had to keep the ship afloat. The board voted unanimously. Henry leaned forward. Did you plant the explosives? Vincent laughed. If I had, you wouldn't be standing here. Why did you come to the yacht that night? Vincent's smile didn't falter. To talk. You'd been acting strange. Talking about walking away. About dissolving contracts that would have cost us billions. I tried to reason with you. You kicked me off the yacht. That's the last I saw of you. Convenient, I muttered. Vincent glanced at me for the first time. And who's this? Your new conscience? She's the reason I'm standing here, Henry said sharply. And she has more loyalty in one finger than you ever did. Vincent set down his glass. Look, Henry. I didn't try to kill you. But you made enemies. You were about to blow the whistle on offshore accounts, shell donations, tax evasions. You were going to burn the whole house down because it was rotten. Henry growled. Vincent's eyes turned cold. And now you've come back to finish the job? I came back to remember who I am. And now I do. For a moment, the air between them was electric. Then Vincent said something that chilled me to the bone. Be careful, Henry. There are people in this company who buried you once. They won't hesitate to do it again. As we left the building, I whispered. He knows more than he's saying. Henry nodded. And now he knows I'm not afraid. But deep down, we both were. Because this wasn't just about memory anymore. It was about power, secrets, survival. And the next move could be deadly. Back at the estate, the air felt heavier. Louis was waiting for us in the garden, pruning roses with calm precision. But the moment he saw our faces, he knew something had shifted. How bad was it? he asked. Henry didn't answer right away. He walked past him, straight into the house, his footsteps echoing down the marble halls. I followed, my heart racing, trying to match the speed of his thoughts. He stopped in the study, an old, wood-paneled room filled with leather-bound books, antique globes, and dust-covered portraits. He ran his hand along a shelf, then pressed inward. A click, a section of the bookshelf shifted. I blinked. Is that a secret door? Henry pushed it open, revealing a narrow passage that led to a small locked drawer embedded into the wall. He stared at it like he had known it was there all along, even if he hadn't remembered it until just now. I don't know why I hid this here, he whispered, but something tells me it matters. He reached for a key hanging around his neck, a key I hadn't noticed before. He slid it into the lock and turned. Inside the drawer was a single leather folder, dusty and yellowed at the edges. He opened it, and the past came flooding out. Photos, handwritten notes, ledgers, bank transfers, shell company names scribbled in Henry's unmistakable handwriting. But the one that stopped me cold was a document stamped confidential with the company's seal. It was a memo of resignation, dated a day before the explosion. You were really going to leave, I said. Henry nodded. And take this evidence to the authorities. There were signatures missing. No final stamp of approval. No response from legal. It never went through. He hadn't gotten the chance. I bet Vivian never saw this, I whispered. If she had, maybe she would have believed you weren't just abandoning everything for no reason. She probably thought I was running off with another woman, he said bitterly. Maybe Vincent made sure of that. We scanned more pages, charity funds rerouted into offshore accounts, slush money funneled into political campaigns. Every piece was damning. And every page had one thing in common, they all tied back to Vincent Shaw. This could bring him down, I said. Henry shook his head. It's not enough. These are drafts. Notes. Nothing stamped. Nothing official. It's my word against his, and I'm the man who supposedly lost his mind. Then what do we need? Henry looked at me, and something in his expression hardened. The final audit reports. The ones I ordered just before the yacht trip. They were never filed. Never published. If they still exist, they'll be in the company's off-site vault. Vincent would never keep something that dangerous in the building. Where's the vault? He took a breath. Upstate. A private storage facility I bought years ago. Fingerprint access. Dual codes. One of the only things I didn't entrust to anyone else. I nodded. Then that's where we go next. We hit the road before nightfall. Louis insisted on coming with us. I've come too far to back out now, he said with quiet determination, and Henry agreed. The storage facility was 2 hours away, hidden in the hills behind layers of electronic gates and private security. But Henry's fingerprint still worked. The inside smelled of cold steel and cedar. We followed a long corridor until we reached a reinforced door marked with his initials. He entered the passcode. The door clicked open. Inside was a climate-controlled room filled with boxes, safes, and old company files. And in the far corner, an untouched safe that looked like it hadn't been opened in a decade. Henry knelt and input another code. Click. The door swung open. And there it was. A hard drive. Wrapped in silk. A red folder labeled Audit Report, Internal Use Only. Henry's hands trembled as he pulled it out. This is it, he whispered. Proof of everything. But before we could even process it, before we could celebrate the first real victory, the alarm blared. A red light flashed overhead. Someone had triggered the outer gate. Louis ran to the security monitor. A black SUV was pulling up, and 3 men in tactical gear stepped out, guns drawn. They're not police, he said. They're here for you. Henry clutched the drive to his chest. We need to get out. Now. I grabbed the folder. And we bolted through the emergency exit. The facility was massive. But Henry had built in private escape tunnels for just in case. We ducked through a narrow hallway, climbed through a hatch, and emerged on the other side of the hill, where Louis had parked an old Jeep for emergencies. We jumped in, slammed the doors, and sped off into the night. Bullets rang out behind us. But we didn't stop, because in that moment, we weren't just fugitives. We were the only people standing between the truth and a machine built to erase it. We didn't slow down for hours. The Jeep thundered down back roads, headlights slicing through pitch-black wilderness as we left the vault, and the gunfire behind. Louis gripped the wheel like a soldier on a battlefield, knuckles white, eyes laser-focused on the rearview mirror. No one followed. Not yet. But we all knew they would. Henry sat beside me in the back, the folder and hard drive clutched tightly in his lap. His suit was soaked with sweat. His hair stuck to his forehead. And his hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of clarity. They wanted it destroyed, he muttered. All of it. That's why they erased me. It wasn't just about control. It was about survival. I had the power to bring them down. And I didn't even know it. You know it now, I said, touching his arm. I should have trusted someone, he whispered. Back then. But I thought I had to do it alone. You're not alone anymore. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something unbreakable in his eyes. Conviction. We reached a safe house by sunrise. Not a fancy bunker or a remote cabin, but a crumbling cottage Louis's cousin owned in the countryside. No cell service. No neighbors. No cameras. Just four walls. One fireplace. And a landline from the 90s. Perfect for disappearing. While Louis made strong black coffee on the wood-burning stove, Henry and I spread the documents across the kitchen table. The hard drive whirred to life in my laptop. And within seconds, spreadsheets and files opened like a digital graveyard of corporate sins. Fraud, bribery, money laundering, worse. All approved. Signed off by Vincent Shaw and his circle, many of whom still sat on the board. Henry's resignation memo was in there too, along with several threatening emails from Vincent warning him to stand down and stay silent. It was enough to destroy the entire upper structure of Marlowe Industries. But only if we got it to the right people. We can't go to the police, Henry said. Not yet. The board has ties to law enforcement, campaign donations, favors. If we go to the wrong person, this disappears again, and we might not survive a second attempt. I nodded slowly. What about the press? Henry considered it. A national outlet. Someone with reach. Someone who can't be bought. Louis chimed in. I know a name. Elise Rowan. Investigative reporter. Broke a senator's embezzlement scandal last year. She's clean. Brutally honest. Henry looked at me. Think you can get her on the phone? I nodded and went straight to the landline. It took some convincing, some fast talking, and some well-placed keywords. But eventually, Elise Rowan agreed to meet us, off the record. Remote location. No electronics except hers. She arrived the next day wearing a hoodie, sunglasses, and a look that could slice through steel. You've got 15 minutes, she said. Start talking. Henry handed her the folder. Then the drive. Then he took off his sunglasses. Elise froze. Henry Marlowe? She whispered. That's impossible. You're dead. Not quite. She listened as we told her everything. From the street corner where I first found him to the attempted ambush at the vault. She reviewed every file, every spreadsheet, every timestamp and signature. And when she spoke again, her voice had changed. This is massive, she said. The kind of thing that topples corporations, destroys reputations. People will go to prison. And people will come for you. Henry warned. She met his eyes. Let them. She agreed to publish, but only if she could verify every file independently. That meant one more step. She needed a witness, a member of the board, someone willing to speak, someone who hadn't forgotten what Henry meant to the company. And that's when Louis said something none of us expected. I know someone. We turned to him. Eleanor Bishop, he said. Old friend of your father's. She's been on the board longer than anyone. She fought to keep your name on the foundation after you were declared dead. She never believed it was an accident. Henry stared. Why didn't she reach out? Because Vivian and Vincent shut her out. Louis replied. She didn't have the power to stop them. But if she sees you, really sees you, it might be enough. Henry took a deep breath. Then we go to her. Tonight we drove into the city after sundown. Eleanor Bishop lived in a high-rise penthouse overlooking the river. Security was tight. But one phone call from Louis got us past the front desk. When she opened the door, the expression on her face said it all. Shock, then heartbreak. Henry, she whispered. Oh my God. He stepped inside. And the years melted off both of them. They talked for hours. She confirmed what we feared. Vincent had seized power almost immediately. Vivian had gone quiet, grief-stricken, but strangely compliant. The board had been fed lies, rumors, slowly manipulated into silence. Anyone who questioned Vincent's rise was quietly replaced or bought off. But Eleanor kept her seat. She never gave up hope. And now, with Henry alive, and the proof in hand, she was ready to fight. I'll testify, she said, hands shaking. I'll speak on record. I'll burn it all down if I have to. Henry took her hand. Then we do it together. That night, as we returned to the safe house, I sat beside Henry in the back seat, watching the dark fields pass by. You know this isn't over, right? I said. Vincent won't go down without a war. I know, he replied. But for the first time, I'm ready. I looked at him, at the man who had once been lost, broken, confused. Now, he was sharp, focused, reborn. No longer a ghost of the past, but a man stepping fully into his truth. And I realized something else too. This wasn't just about justice. It was about redemption. For him, for the company, for us. The morning the story broke, the world stopped. Elise Rowan's headline exploded across every news outlet. Billionaire Henry Marlowe found alive, whistleblower exposes corruption at Marlowe Industries. Within minutes, it trended globally. Photos of Henry, now and then, flashed across screens. Videos from Elise's exclusive interview ed, showing him calm, clear-eyed, and undeniably alive. The article included digital copies of every damning document, Eleanor Bishop's sworn statement, and direct accusations against Vincent Shaw and several other board members. The response was immediate. Stock prices plunged. Federal investigations launched. Protests formed outside Marlowe Industries headquarters. And the world demanded answers. But the people we feared most, they didn't vanish quietly. 3 nights after the article went live, we received the first warning. A rock through the cottage window, wrapped in paper that read, "You should have stayed dead." Louis installed cameras. Henry reinforced the doors. But none of us slept easily after that. We knew this wasn't over. Truth may be powerful, but power doesn't surrender without a fight. Elise, now under protection, sent us updates every hour. Warrants were issued. Vincent's accounts were frozen. Vivian was subpoenaed, but hadn't shown up. Then, something unexpected. A message. Not from the press. Not from the police. From Vivian. She agreed to meet Henry at a private park near the old Opera House. No security. No press. No police. I begged him not to go. But he had to. Louis and I stayed back, hidden, watching from a distance. Vivian arrived in black, sunglasses on, her face unreadable. When Henry approached, she didn't move. "I should hate you," she said first. "But I don't." He said nothing. "I knew you were alive," she confessed. "Not at first. But deep down, I felt it. That something wasn't right about the explosion, about how quickly Vincent stepped in. But I let myself believe the lie. It was easier than facing what you were planning to do." "You were part of it?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. I just stayed quiet. That was my crime." He studied her. "Why meet now?" "Because I know what's coming," she said. "Vincent won't go quietly. He's going to run, disappear before they indict him. And when he does, he'll take everything he can, including you." Henry's voice dropped. "What do you mean?" Vivian reached into her coat and handed him a small flash drive. "Insurance. Backups of conversations. Documents. Voice recordings. Enough to tie him to everything. I kept it in case I ever needed a way out. He took it slowly. Why give it to me? Because I owe you more than silence, she whispered. And because I'm tired of pretending. There was a long pause, then she said, almost too softly to hear, you once asked me what mattered more, power or peace. I chose wrong. Maybe this is my way of choosing differently. She turned to leave, pausing only once. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped knowing how. Then she vanished into the fog. With her drive added to the evidence, everything unraveled. Vincent Shaw was arrested at a private airstrip 2 days later, caught with a fake passport, 2 bodyguards, and $5 million in cash. His smirk had finally cracked when the feds slapped the cuffs on him. Eleanor Bishop took interim control of Marlowe Industries and began the process of tearing out the rot from the inside. And Henry stood in front of a national press conference, alive, dignified, no longer a whisper from the past. I was lost, he said into the microphones. Not just physically, but morally. I built a world I couldn't recognize. And when I finally found the courage to destroy it, someone tried to destroy me. But I survived. And now, I'm here to rebuild, not just a company, but a legacy worth remembering. It was powerful, honest, redemptive. And I watched him say it from the wings of the stage, heart full and aching at the same time. Weeks passed. The estate was reopened. The dust cleared. The piano played again. But something had changed. Henry didn't want to go back to the old life, not entirely. He stepped down from the company permanently, handing full control to a new, transparent board. He donated half his wealth to the very charities he once doubted. And he asked me to stay, not as his assistant, not as a helper, but as someone who reminded him what it meant to be human. I thought you saved me, he said one evening as we sat under the stars. But the truth is, you helped me remember how to save myself. I smiled. Still glad I gave you that sandwich? He laughed. It might have been the most important sandwich in history. And so, the man the world thought dead lived again. Not in the headlines, not in the numbers, but in the small moments, the music, the kindness, the truth finally spoken. And as for me, I never expected to be part of something like this. But somehow, helping a stranger on the street led me into the heart of a story bigger than either of us. A story of memory, of betrayal, of second chances, of Henry Marlowe, the billionaire who had everything, lost it all, and came back, not just to reclaim it, but to make it right.